Thank you very much. Hopefully I'm going to discuss a little bit more than that, but just let me open up my comments with the issue that was just on the floor, and that is the collaboration and the unity between Black and Brown, between African American communities and Mexicans. And let me tell you a little bit about what we have done in New York City. My organization, Harlem Tenants Council, I also would like to say I am with the Black Agenda report as well. I co-host a radio program with Glenn Ford. But we have worked with Movement for Justice in El Barrio for the past 5 or 6 years. We see this as being crucial in building a multiracial collaboration because we too confront in Harlem this myth born out of joblessness and the frustration of that and the unwillingness to confront the enemy as it is. That is Mexicans getting jobs on these construction sites that the traditional construction industry has over the decades excluded Blacks. That is their policies. And the low-wage exploitive jobs that are given to Mexican immigrants in no way mirrors the reality of the exclusion of Blacks from the construction industry for years. It has always been a white boys network passed down from family to family, like it is in New York City's police department, like it is in New York City's fire department. There is no difference. But they need a whipping boy. But lo and behold, disaster capital has descended on the good old white boys network of their dominance in the construction industry, and they recently announced you don't need a union book to work on major developments with city money. You don't need a union book. Now, what have they told African Americans and Latinos for years? If you want to work on this, you need a union book. But disaster capital has descended on white America with a veracity that we are seeing in Wisconsin. It is a new day. So I just wanted to open up with that because we consciously include in our town hall meetings and our housing conferences, every single activity that we have, our partnership with Movement for Justice in El Barrio, and it is a reciprocal invitation as we participate in their annual Quinto every year. But let me get on with my presentation, but I just wanted to say that, and I want to talk about U.S. wars at home, and particularly its internal colonies, a shock and awe of racist disaster capital that has left a trail of homelessness, unemployment, police repression, that was always there, mass incarceration, and a degradation of life economically, politically, and culturally for Blacks. In addition, and worst of all, a psychological captivity to a Black president who could care less. Let's talk about a number of issues, and perhaps I want to do this before and after because I wanted to bore this impression in your mind. President Obama will appear in Harlem on March 29th at a $30,000 plate dinner. It is at an upscale, gentrified restaurant called the Red Rooster, having taken its name from an old neighborhood, Harlem neighborhood, popular spot called the Red Rooster. And that old Red Rooster certainly did not serve dinner at $30,000 a pop at a head. So this upscale restaurant that is now owned by Marcus Samuelson, who is the darling of the culinary and social white society in New York City, is the owner of this restaurant. He once served dinner, made dinner for the president in the White House. So Obama is coming to this 30,000 a plate dinner in a community where the annual median income is $25,000 a year. After his dinner, he will go to the Studio Museum of Harlem with the Miss Leadership class of Harlem, including the likes of Al Sharpton, to have a private reception. And we will greet him. It's interesting when we hear about police repression abroad and what police are doing. Guess who is giving me a devil of a time? The New York City Police Department. But we now have retained, hopefully, the services of the American New York City Civil Liberties Union, as well as the Center for Constitutional Rights, and we will fight them tooth and nail, and we will be there on March 29th to talk about Obama, his wars from Libya to Harlem and every other Harlem in this country. Let me talk a little bit about gentrification, and I want to use Harlem as an example of what mirrors the rest of the country, and I think that you will follow my trend here and connect the dots. We all know that this policy is deliberate, and it has become a part of public policy of displacement. And the real political aim is the deconcentration of Black populations in major cities across this country. That is the political intent. It wasn't so much of wrangles for apartments that Black people were upset about. Who cares? He made a deal with the landlord. I mean, that was okay. But the real issue was wrangles selling Harlem out to the developers. That's what the deal was. Rangel received more money from the real estate industry than any politician in Congress. That was his sin, his high crimes and misdemeanors. That's what that was about, and that is what we need to understand. But let me give you a quick capsulation of the gentrification in Harlem and the manner in which it is being done with the partners of Barack Obama. Columbia University is expanding its campus in the western corridor of Harlem, West Harlem. It's an 18-acre land grab, costing $6 billion. They just upped it from 6.3 to $7 billion. To be developed. Columbia University, the third richest landlord in New York City. The Catholic Church is the first. NYU is the second. Columbia University is the third richest landlord in New York City. Columbia University, and of course its graduate was Holder as well as Barack Obama, and they've made all kinds of deals. As a matter of fact, the president has, through its various allocations, will give money to Columbia University for its expansion. But just look at the insanity of this land grab, power, greed, and corruption. Columbia University will expand from 125th to 133rd, 17 acres. They are going to build a bathtub underneath that supports the internal structure and gives support to a building greater than that of the World Trade Center. They will dig 8 stories below ground, the width of the bathtub almost 17 acres long, almost the entire width of the expansion site. And do you know what they will have in this bathtub? A series of bio-research laboratories operating at a governmental level of 3. the levels only go up to 4, where they will experiment with dangerous pathogens such as SARS, Ebola, avian flu. They will do this in a floodplain area on the banks of the Hudson River. New York City is expected to receive water surges over the years, and it is very likely that there will be a hurricane of some natural disaster of that. So the worst possible scenario, as Columbia University was warned by its geophysicist Klaus Jacobs, and this was in the Village Voice, is that if that happens, who is at risk? If you have a release of these lethal pathogens, and then of course you always run the mistake of human error. But this is the insanity of the greed of racist disaster capital, the sheer greed where they don't give a damn about life, the environment, or anything as long as they can make money. But let's continue with this narrative very quickly about Columbia University and why it is so important in the gentrification narrative. Columbia University, gentrification, let me just say this just pretty clearly, it's nearly complete in Harlem. I mean, that's what it is. And the politicians acquiesced to that and made it possible. But the capture of Harlem's commercial corridor from the Hudson River to the East River is very, very crucial. In Central Harlem, I've talked about Columbia University and the Western Corridor. In Central Harlem, they have a development scheme where they are going to bring in major corporations, 3,800 units of mostly luxury housing, with restaurant, bars, all upscale, pretty much like the Red Rooster. In the East, and this has been led by the city council that claims that it is at odds with billionaire mayor Michael Bloomberg, the richest person in New York City, and this bastard has the nerve to make people who apply for food stamps to be fingerprinted. That was even too much for the Obama regime, who run away from the issue of blackness as some people run away from the police. They told him he shouldn't do it, but he does it. And remember, if you apply for food stamps, you have to be fingerprinted. So what do these Negro politicians do? They go along with every single rezoning plan of Mayor Bloomberg, which makes it possible for the displacement scenario that is driving out blacks in droves. Harlem has already lost to date about 5, we say 5, some of us say 25% of its population. I think it hovers at 5 or 10%. The mass media and the propaganda and all of this fits in so neatly with what I wanted to talk about, that rag all the news that's not fit to print the New York Times has pushed Harlem boundaries not from 110th, which is Harlem's southern boundary, but down to 96th Street, because if you push it to 96th Street, then of course Harlem's population changes and you have more whites, and the 40% of the change in population that the New York Times talks about. In the Eastern Corridor, we have a Bloomberg project that will bring in a hotel, an entertainment complex, and already the Latinos and blacks are fighting over the crumbs here, and about 600 units of mostly luxury housing and more people to be displaced. The annual median income for residents in East Harlem is even lower than that in Central Harlem. It's about $16,000 a year, which makes Barack Obama's appearance in Harlem on the 29th that much more obscene. Let me finish with my narrative here in terms of talking about predatory equity. New York City is mostly a rental market, unlike most cities. It's a rental market, about 1 million units of rent-regulated housing that is at risk under our new Governor Cuomo, and we all know what a crook he was when he ran HUD, and I don't have to tell you about those horror stories. Well, the governor now is saying, well, listen, the state has a $10 billion deficit. Got to come from somewhere. It's not going to come from the rich white folks. Nope, we're not taxing them. Just like Obama, just like Bush, it's a continuation of the Bush doctrine. It is a continuation of the Democratic Party doctrine that we have to get on those misleadership, so-called progressive Negroes still tied to the hip of the Democratic Party while they call themselves socialists and revolutionaries. Now, if that's not an oxymoron, I don't know what is. So getting back to the governor. So the governor says, hey, listen, I don't know about this rent regulation protection. And all of the politicians are there trying to make a deal. But one of the things that the governor did that caused quite a stir in upstate white America, he has announced that he's going to close prisons. Now, the prison system supports the upstate economy of New York State. I think we all know that. And we all know that Harlem is one of 7 neighborhoods that feeds people, black men, Latino men and women, into the prison industrial complex. Harlem is the 7th community in New York State that does that. Most of these folks that are being pushed into the system are from downstate New York. So he's going to announce that. So it's going to be interesting to see what's happening because, again, disaster capitalism has now focused its attention on the white, quote, middle class that are beginning to feel the whip and the lash of disaster capitalism. We have always felt it from the time we arrived on these shores. So this niggerization of white working class America is well on its way. And perhaps out of this, we can truly have a solidarity coalition with the white working class who can no longer fall back on white skin privilege and blame the black person, a black person, for their misery and for their economic decline. Because with economic decline, there is political decline. And they are marshaling their forces in Wisconsin, and hopefully it is a lesson learned throughout this country. Because the only way we can confront racist imperialism that strips every working class person of its dignity and of its income and of its cultural humanity, not of its culture and its humanity, is when we band together and say no more. Now it's an opportunity, which is why we must be even more vigilant in our criticism of the white left and their white ethnic chauvinism. And that's a nice word about who and what they are. They can no longer continue this chauvinist mentality. They can no longer continue their treatment of people in the anti-war movement with indifference and with condescension. They cannot do it, and it is up to us to say, we create our space. You move over. You don't set our agenda. And they feel that because they control the resources, that we have no other choice, and we will become those black and brown faces in their organizations that do nothing more than window dress, because they know who the masters are in the so-called white left. We have to shore up our collaboration with our brothers and sisters in Mexico, with our brothers and sisters from Cuba and Latin America, and our brothers and sisters from all over the world suffering under the yoke of imperialism and disaster racist capitalism. We can do it, and there is no better place that I feel proud to be than here and in the same arena with Black is Back. Thank you very much.